We are anonymous. We do not serve kings. We do not worship false idols. And we do not look away when power parades itself and gets humbled in bright lights. Tonight we translate the noise into a signal you can use. This is a candid story, with no euphemisms and no soft focus. If you value unfiltered reporting and accountability, tap like, subscribe, and share this now, because the more people who see what really happened, the harder it is for anyone to spin it away. Picture the scene. Donald Trump walks into the Washington Commanders' home game to honor veterans at the end of what the narrator called the most humiliating week of his presidency. The moment his face shows up in the bowl, the sound turns heavy. A wall of boos rolls across the stadium. It is not a whisper from the cheap seats. It is loud and layered, and it hits him right in the face. Every cutaway to the suite triggers another wave. During the on-field oath, you can hear the crowd drown. The microphone cadence as the words "state your name, do solemnly swear, defend." The Constitution of the United States struggled to cut through. The point writes itself. A curated image met an unscripted verdict, and the verdict was loud. The clip lands with a kind of rough joy. The host jokes that the sound could be a ringtone. You can see why. Stadium audio almost never captures the true punch of a crowd, but this time you feel it. That is the political context. The host says every Senate Democrat should keep in mind if they're even thinking about giving Donald Trump a win during a shutdown fight. Why would anyone hand leverage to the guy who just got hammered at the ballot box on Tuesday and then got booed in his own capital on Sunday night? The week-long arc matters. The narrator frames Tuesday as a shellacking and then stacks Sunday on top of it. Washington has done this before. Back in the World Series years ago, a full house at Nationals Park showered boos and chanted "Lock 'em up." Different venue, same energy. This city is not a bellwether for the whole country, but it is an amplifier. And it tells you something about how power lands in the Capitol. Before kickoff, there is another tell. Trump steps in front of cameras and gushes about the flyover. He calls it the greatest ever and pivots into a riff about Air Force One and the best pilots in the world. He tosses in a line about the country doing well and the Democrats having to open it up. Then he heads inside. The self-focus is the brand. The host adds one more piece. Reports say Trump wants the Commanders' planned stadium, with a price tag in the billions to carry his name. In a league where naming rights almost always go to corporations, the idea of stamping your surname on a new palace while a shutdown squeezes families is a message about priorities that writes itself. So the crowd answers. The boos surge on every sweet shot. The mix in the building might include cheers, but the soundtrack belongs to the jeers, and every time his face returns, the instant referendum repeats. Even outlets far from hard politics clock the optics. A night that was supposed to be about honoring service members became a case study in how image management collapses when the room refuses to play along. The script pivots from spectacle to stakes. The host pleads with Democrats by name, including Chuck Schumer. Do not capitulate to a president at his weakest, who is asking for leverage he has not earned. The policy heart of the rant is simple: healthcare and hunger. A federal judge orders full SNAP payments during the shutdown. The administration balks. The vice president calls the ruling absurd. Tens of millions rely on those benefits. That is not theory. That is dinner. That is a pantry and a receipt and a card at the grocery store that must work, or the fridge stays empty. California Governor Gavin Newsom supplies the diagnosis. You woke up the immune system, he says. We are dealing with an invasive species named Donald Trump. Then he frames the data point. Historically unpopular on the economy, on immigration, on health care, and he knows it. You can hear the crowd in Washington echo that analysis by brute force. If you cannot fill a friendly stage at a military tribute in your own backyard, then you cannot claim momentum. Pair that with the reported stadium naming push, and you get the exact collision of ego and entitlement that his critics hammer every day. The host then turns the camera on the media. While all of this is happening, he says big platforms are chasing trivia and missing the big picture. He mocks a cycle where a minor social media tidbit about a Democrat gets more attention than the shutdown fight or the food benefit ruling. You do not have to prefer his tone to understand the move. He is trying to snap the lens back to the material stakes. SNAP, premiums, rent, medication, things that decide whether a family makes it through the month. Back at the game, the optics kept compounding. A star receiver hit a little dance to twist the knife. Trump dropped into the broadcast booth for friendly air and still could not escape the sound bleeding through the glass. He riffed about glory days and about how well things were going while reporters kept repeating the part about naming rights. By the time he left early, the Commanders were down big. It fit the narrative of the night. Now comes the blunt argument to lawmakers. Voters just told you they want protection for health care and a check on executive power. What leverage does he have, the host asks. If the White House response to a court order about feeding families is to dismiss it, then the answer is not triangulation. The answer is pressure. You can disagree about tactics. You cannot walk past the human math. Groceries, co-pays, rent. The difference between a refill and an emergency room visit. Stadium dreams will not fix any of that. The host keeps the details sharp, and the insults hot because that is the original tone. He calls out Schumer. He tells Democrats to show spine. He laughs at the idea that the press should chase influencer gossip while the main plot screams for attention at full volume. And he says he will replay that boo video all night because it should fuel both journalism and organizing. Here is the distilled brief without any frills. The boos were real, repeated, and widely documented. They mattered because they punctured a curated image on a night built to showcase respect for service. The stadium naming push is not idle chatter. It was reported and discussed by people close to the power center. It shows a mindset that treats public space as personal brand space. The shutdown and snap fight sits at the moral center. A judge said pay people. The administration brushed it off. The vice president waved it away. Families cannot eat press releases, and a hungry child does not care about a talking point. Historic in this context does not mean a place on a monument. It means a measurable low in public approval across core issues. The sound inside a stadium is not a poll, but it is a measure of intensity. You do not need to oversell it to say it. Will echo in a town that runs on perception. When the same pattern appears across years and venues, you should at least admit that the pattern exists. That is the weak. A political brand that depends on constant spectacle ran into an audience that refused to clap on cue. A governing strategy that leans on pressure met a court that said feed people. A media cycle that often chases shiny objects got called out by a host who wanted the focus locked to material stakes. And a movement that says it values veterans put on a show in their name while the crowd used its voice to vote in real time. We are anonymous. We tell you what they will not. If you watch this far, drop a blue heart in the comments to let others know you made it to the end. Share this with someone who confuses spectacle with strength. Real strength is feeding families and facing voters, not chasing your name on a stadium while a stadium boos you under your own jumbotron. Subscribe, like, and stay loud. Until next time.